Good morning and very warm welcome to the session today. Uh, no need? Oh, okay. No, but because there is a video recording, so that's why. And why should I miss my voice? uh, anyway, so the morning looks brighter. I thought that there may be, the house would be full, but nonetheless, when we are there, I think that makes it all. Yeah. So, uh, yeah, 10 at least. Thank you, Nidhi, for adding that value. So, you would see that very interesting panel discussion this one is for me. Like, personally, I would say that this was the closest to my heart. The reason being, I always think that the organizations today, they are working with almost 5 to 6 generations working at the same time, at the same place. With so much of diversity in age, thinking, and attitude. It's not only the diversity in terms of inclusiveness or gender or any other thing, but what I strongly feel is that the generation gap and the generation thinking has been so much a cause of worry, particularly to the HR, because they feel that this is a tough task. Because the youngsters think that we are the techno savvy people, we know it all, and the oldies, so-called oldies, including myself, maybe I fall in those oldies, where, oh wow, you are showing this, that they may think that, oh, okay, you are not up to the mark. But whereas I feel the gray hairs also represent wisdom. The gray hairs do represent the experience, the maturity, the acceptance. And what I miss in the young generation, I love their enthusiasm. But no one wants to go to the shop floor, even if it is an HR function. They don't want to get connected to the grassroots. They don't want to come out of their AC chambers. They all want to be the leaders. They all want to be successful, but they do not digest failures. They do not digest, somebody going ahead of them. If everyone becomes leader, who is going to be the follower? That is where all the questions arise. And I feel it is equally important to understand that what can be the value add, how can we think through this panel discussion, and let us bring out, maybe many of you sitting here, I think I'm not talking about a panel here, but we all are panelists today. We are certain people, of course, are this side of the dais, but I would really like everyone to get involved, today's discussion maybe, so that, we get the best out of it. Maybe sometimes small is beautiful. So this crowd, whatever it is, but I think it is going to give a wonderful head start. Hand over to you, Anil, for all, moderation, which you have done already. I'm very happy, all my panel moderators had connected with everyone, and the questions and discussions have been at their level already. So that's there. And here I see 3 beautiful people coming in. Jal, Sangamitra, and our own cute Gary. So he has been, yesterday, during the cultural program, all the girls were clicking pictures with him, saying that he's so cute. Yeah. And he was saying, I don't know why people are calling me cute.
That defies your logic of the grey haired man.
Yes, absolutely. That was my point, that all the youngsters were glued to him. And I don't know what magic you win, what magic you spin.
So you already started envying us, sir.
So, okay, thank you. So Anil, session goes to you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajeshwari, for setting the ball rolling and the momentum that you're given to this session. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. I extend a heartfelt thanks to AHRD for this honor and also the opportunity to interact with a group of elite HR professionals today. My name is Anil Nair and I serve an organization, Zydus Cadila, to build their talent and leadership pipeline. It's been 14 years associated with a single organization. I was talking to my friend in the morning. It's a mutually tolerated experience. Right? Well, forums like this, I believe, help us to look outward and also get a sense of the new age practices, the challenges, and the possibilities that are ongoing across the organizations in the world. Well, I see a great deal of symbiosis happening with these sessions with cross-border learnings. Ladies and gentlemen, I have with me eminent panelists today for deliberations on the subject, Youth Icon HR Leaders Addressing the Multi-Generational Workforce. Well, it took a while for me to decipher the subject when I received this invitation, but then we people sitting here have reached a mutual consensus on the flow and addressing the topic today. Well, we are aware that the gap in the generations is lowered terribly over the years. Now, be it siblings at home or employees at workplace, the environment has become dynamic and more multicultural and multi-generational. Well, the speed at which the workforce demographics are changing, we realize that any speed in reciprocation to cope up with these challenges sometimes seems insufficient, and that's the topic today. We hope the next few hours, we panelists are able to drive our discussions to take away some best learnings to combat these challenges of addressing the multi-generational workforce, which Dr. Rajeshwari made a mention of. But before we proceed with the discussions, let me have the honor of introducing the eminent panelists today. To the center is Dr. Louis Quast. Dr. Louis is a senior lecturer and coordinator of the Human Resource Development graduate programs in the Department of Organizational Leadership, Policy and Development in the College of Education and Human Development, University of Minnesota. He teaches leadership, career development, and human resource development courses, conduct research on multiple aspects of these related fields, and work on other professional engagement projects like hosting a symposium on best practices in leadership development and work with a cross-sector team to host a workshop for job loss counselors and related professionals. Welcome, Dr. Louis. To his right is Dr. John Werner. John is a professor in the Department of Management at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. He earned his PhD in organizational behavior from Michigan State University. His research has covered topics such as organizational citizenship behavior, training, performance appraisal, legal issues and human resource management, and team effectiveness, as well as actions that managers can engage in to build trust between employees and the management. That's Dr. John for you. To his right is Mr. Dilip Jain. Mr. Dilip Jain is currently working as Global Compensation and Benefits Leader for Willis Towers Watson. A very interesting topic, Comp and Ben, when it comes to us employees. Covering all international markets spread across APAC, CEMEA, and Latin America. He's a regular speaker at global conferences and a native of Udaipur, Rajasthan in India. He is a certified compensation professional from World at Work and Masters from Sri Ram College of Commerce, University of Delhi. Welcome, Dilip. To my right is Mr. Manoj Sharma. Mr. Manoj Sharma is currently working with Adani Power Limited as a Senior Vice President and Head HR. He started his career from pharmaceuticals major, ran Baxi Laboratories, and advanced through Aditya Birla Group and Ispat Industries. Welcome, Manoj. And to my extreme right, to the left of Dr. Rajeshwari, is Dr. Nidhi Vashisht. She is a PhD in Training and Development and gold medalist in Masters of Human Resource Management. She started a career as an executive HR. In the span of last 15 years, she has gathered a rich experience in the vast domain of human resource management, training, and organizational development. She currently works as a faculty and a head MDP Research and Consultancy Week for Jaipuria Institute of Management. So welcome, panelists, to this discussion. So let's begin the discussions with my first question that I'd like to pose on to Dr. Louis. So, as Dr. Rajeshwari made a mention of the new workforce which are emerging in our work practices and in organizations, uh, there is an academy interface which happens, and a session which happened yesterday about bridging this gap of industry academy interface. So I would like to ask this question to Dr. Quast, who has been a lecturer, that sir, that you get an opportunity to interact with the future workforce even before they take up an employment. So how, according to you, are the expectations of these new generation students changing with the reference to time? So.
Great, thank you very much. A wonderful question. I'll begin with some disclaimers. I have, in fact, conducted research on this in the United States, and I have no data about parallel patterns or divergent patterns here in India. So perhaps part of the answer will have to come from my colleagues up here who might have data that's local. I will say a couple of things, and then I do have a specific answer to your question. The initial definition of generational cohorts that were based on research that was conducted in the United States would suggest that the traditionals were born 1945 and earlier, boomers 46 to 63, Gen X 64 to 79, millennials 80 to 94, and what was labeled Gen Z, now labeled the iGen, 95 and forward. Having conducted research on this, those breakpoints make sense in the United States. I've conducted only one study outside of the United States. It happened to have been in Germany, and the year breakpoints were distinctly different because of social phenomena occurring in that country. There are boomers and Gen X's and millennials and iGen in Germany, but the division point is different. So my challenge for you is, what years are the breakpoints in India? And my suspicion, based on this limited sample, is it's not the same as it is in the United States. There's no reason to expect that it would be. Secondly, I will say the best clearinghouse for such information is the Center for Generational Kinetics, CGK, who gathers data from multiple countries and attempts to report it. The methodology of contributors to CGK's site is variable. So, buyer beware. My third comment was about the job expectations of the students we're seeing now. The students I have now in my undergrad class are Gen Z, or iGen. And a colleague from the United States, Jean Twenge, has just released a book entitled iGen. She coined the label. She doesn't like the label Gen Z. And I challenge you to consider some of its assertions. I didn't come here to read a book. I'm going to read two short passages. One, from an iGen individual. I would rather be on my phone in my room and watching Netflix than spending time with my family, much less friends or schoolmates. That's what I've been doing most of the summer, and in fact, most of my life. I've been on my phone more than I've been with actual people. That's just the way my generation is. We didn't have a choice to know any life without iPads and iPhones. I think we like our phones more than we like actual people. Oh. Close quote. So her conclusion, and that's the only other sentence I'm going to read, why today's super-connected kids, referring to Gen Z, are growing up less rebellious, more tolerant, less happy, and completely unprepared for adulthood. Those are some scathing assertions about Gen Z. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no idea if Jean Twenge's assertions apply to a corresponding generation here in India. I have no data on that, and I hope you go out and discover data on that. Having said that, I will say Jean is actually from Minnesota. She lives and works in Southern California now, but she's a Minnesotan, so I have an affection for her if I rile at some of her conclusions. My other caution is, with a group of my grad students, we inventoried nearly 200 articles published in refereed journals about generational differences, and all but 14 used single point in time data gathering. So they said, let's do a survey. They went out as if we went out in this room today, and we gathered information. What year were you born? And then asked a series of questions. And the problem with single point in time data gathering on millennial differences is, or generational differences is, are the differences attributable to maturation and age, or are they real generational differences? And from the practitioner perspective, I spent 25 years as a practitioner before coming back to university. Maybe it doesn't matter. The question is, what is the mindset and the attitude of these people entering the workplace today? So my specific answer to your specific question, I have a group of about 80 students in an undergrad HRD class, asked them this question, and I've clustered it into themes that I've gathered on this document here. My students are used to me hitting them with questions and demanding, I need a response right now, and they're very acclimated to that. There's one whole theme about flexibility.
Okay.
I'll add an anecdote about the intern coming to work at the private sector consultancy with which I'm still affiliated, who complained in the third week, oh my gosh, you realize they expect us to come in before 9 o'clock every morning and stay until 5. What's with that? Just those kind of expectations. Another theme about technology being integrated into their work, and they're frustrated with organizations that aren't as tech savvy as they are. They've, after all, had a mobile device in their hands. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. My daughter, her mother, wanted to use the parental controls function on the tablet to limit the sites that she could go to. The 4-year-old daughter came up to me and said, Grandpa, there was something wrong with the tablet. I couldn't go to this and that site, but I fixed it, and I can go there just fine now. So she was much smarter than the parental controls were at age 4. Nobody showed her how. She just figured it out. A third theme, real anxiety about competing to find jobs in the job market. Students will have to work their best to compete with peers for limited quality positions. It's harder to get hired. Students are becoming more competitive. If I don't have real work experience, I will be cut out of consideration. And that's visually the longest cluster in my on my list are those expressions of anxiety. Next theme, critical thinking skills, thinking outside the box, work in situations where we have to figure things out for ourselves, think differently when we're outside of our comfort zone, come up with innovative solutions. And the last one is sort of a random assortment of leftovers after I pulled these themes out. Upward mobility. I want to be a regional director within 24 months. More collaboration. More culturally diverse. Positive work environment. Need to learn how to live a community-oriented lifestyle versus an individualistic lifestyle. Said the student at a university in the United States, the most individualistic, culturally speaking, the most individualistic culture in the world. So an expression perhaps pushing back in a different direction. With that quick summary, I hand it off to who's next, Anil?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Quast, for that elaborate opportunity for us to understand these expectations. I really appreciate the questionnaire that you put forward to your students, and also thank them for their responses to make us understand what the expectations are. The one summary what I take for it, the California is not different from India anymore. So that's one of the inference that I draw being working in an organization for long in HR. Thank you for introducing us to this iGen. And that makes us, much more easier to code the population. I mean, it's more of a cell phone generation than an IGN. So it's a cell phone generation 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's how I see it coming over. But then the challenge lies with HR is how is it that you try to organize yourself when such kind of diverse expectations to come up, which at a point in time were not so diverse. And probably I will ask the next set of questions to Dr. Werner, who is an organizational expert. Well, Dr. Werner, what kind of challenges, do you foresee emerging at the workplace because of these multi-generations working together, and how should HR be prepared for it?
Thank you. So I come with a great deal of humility, so I also have my disclaimers. So first of all, my degree is in organizational behavior, which is an oxymoron because organizations don't behave, it's the people in organizations. My focus was on human resources, and as we've heard, we should be very careful about treating humans as resources. So I'm in trouble with both of my foci, and here I am. What's interesting to me is that I think a lot of what the field of organizational behavior has done has been very helpful in understanding things such as leadership, things such as teamwork, job satisfaction, organizational commitment. A lot of very good research has been done. And here are the caveats. Most often in Western contexts, and most often in large organizations. Now, it's almost inevitable because think of the research process. If you're going to do quantitative research, you need a certain number of people. Where are we most likely to find those? In larger organizations. So yes, there's a growing field of entrepreneurship. There's a growing focus on family business. But unfortunately, a lot of what we know does need to be contextualized. So we don't know, and we have to be honest that we don't know about these types of things. I think we're going to be focusing primarily on the younger individual with the youth in the title. One thing I think we should give some attention to, and maybe this will just be a passing comment, but the multi-generational workforce, as you made in your opening comments, we should be looking across the spectrum. And so even though there may be a focus or concern for the younger generation, it is the multi-generational workforce which is so challenging. And what do we do with those who must work, want to work, don't want to work, and all the issues in the aging process? One thing I would submit to you is that there is a growing literature in adult education, in adult learning. And if that is not a part of your repertoire, of your expertise, there are answers out there, especially in the area of the older worker. And with all the stereotypes, older workers can't figure out their iPhones and need their grandkids and all of those things. Older workers can and do learn. It may look different, and it may be different in some different ways. The one other piece that I was very touched by, the Shailesh Tiwari talking about the building skills at the bottom of the pyramid yesterday. I don't know if is he here today? I don't see him. I think it's very important that we understand a lot of what we think we know is aimed at those who have gone beyond high school. I don't know if that's as true in India as it is in the United States, but much of our research has been conducted in people in larger organizations, many of whom have college degrees, but at least high school degrees, and not uncommon that they have more than a bachelor's degree. We cannot afford to exclude those with less education. It's very important that we understand those types of issues. I'm proudly wearing a Ghanaian shirt today. I have a woman from Ghana who's lived in my home. She's now working as a store manager in a large retailer. And she is a success story of someone who was driven to succeed. And now she's bringing her husband, who has never been to the U.S. This fall he's coming because she's gotten her citizenship and her job. He can now come and get his education from that. So again, there are those success stories, but we have so many, not just I've understood from the presentations yesterday that it is an issue here, but it's an issue everywhere of those who have not had the same opportunities. Those are the one thing I want to just kind of address, and I think we'll get into it more as we go along, and I do want to hear from my colleagues here from India. Are younger workers different? Well, of course they are. We've mentioned technology, we've touched on different things. But one of the things that I think we always have to remember is that when I was 18, they were complaining about my generation in 1975. What goes around comes around. Now it's different, I understand, but I think every generation has had concerns about the younger generation being different then.
Yeah.
And again, whether it's how it ever worked out. There was a survey that was just released last week from the Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM, and they asked managers about how their perceptions of this current generation, that this is calling it Generation Z, those born mid-90s on. And you want to guess how many were worried about this? More than 36% said they believe Generation Z will be more difficult to manage than older generations for some of the types of things. The concerns about training, about communication, some of the things that have already been alluded to, how to communicate with. But what's interesting about this is just a short blog piece, is they cite Donna Hager, professor in Cornell, and her point is pretty much my point, is that this is not a new phenomenon. That 5 years ago they did a study and it was all about the millennials, and now it's all about whatever you want to call it. Another one of the recent articles here from Leadership Quarterly, Anderson, Bauer, Griffith, and Buckley. What works for you may not work for, quote, Gen Me. So now we have iGen, Gen Me. I don't like that, but there it is. Limitations of present leadership theories for the new generation. And so there are all these issues that I think we simply have to be humble. I think we simply have to say, we don't know all the answers, but we need to. We desperately need to know this. I'll be talking in the next round about trust. But one of the things that they bring out in this article is that it's likely that we're going to need to treat trust, at least in the Western workforce, differently than we did before because of some of these issues that have already been alluded to that Professor Klaas just talked about. So, closing my opening remarks, many of you would be familiar with the book by Hermann Hesse, Journey to the East. It's a classic in German literature. This group of Westerners is on their way, it's presumably India, and their guide is Leo. And Leo disappears, and the whole party just falls apart. They never get to their destination. And years later, they find Leo, and they were on their way to find the master to learn. And what's the moral of his story? Leo was that master all along. He had come, and all those years he had been the servant, and they treated him like a servant. But the point was that he was the one that was trying to show them the way to enlightenment, and it was not through, it was not in the way that they treated him. But I think for all of us as we come, whether our badges say expert or otherwise, we need to come with that inquisitiveness, that willingness to learn.
Oh, thank you so much, John. There was, thank you for your views, and you even echoed the thoughts that we had in the opening remarks that the gap in the generation is changing. What might appeal to a generation today might not appeal to a generation tomorrow. Perhaps the next year, in case if we get an opportunity to discuss like this, the challenges would have been almost different. The way that we had been managing a generation today might not be tomorrow. The next generation might appear to be the same. And the challenges which come up to the HR of how is it that you manage this multi-generational workforce where the generation gap is changing. And if the Maslow's need would have been framed today, perhaps a portion which HR would attend to more would be the money part. Okay, career is great, growth is correct, but they're the same. What happens is, how do you fulfill your responsibilities? What is the reciprocation in terms of the rewards, in terms of the compensation, in terms of the benefits? The expectations at that level also keep on changing. So next question goes to Mr. Jain, who has been an expert in comp and ben. Well, Mr. Jain, nowadays there have been very creative attempts, and I would put it in quotes, very creative attempts by the organizations to align their comp and ben offering to their employees. So, when I'm discussing with multiple companies and the consultants, I come to know about the creative way the organizations tend to be flexible to offer their compensation and benefits to their employees, obviously considering their generational expectations. As an expert, what creative measures do you think the HR should look at while formulating the compensation strategies?
Thank you, and for
Yeah, and it's a question which has come deep from my heart. Yeah.
like the fellow panelists, I have a disclaimer to share. The disclaimer is that I represent an organization called Willis Towers Watson, which is into a similar business. So whatever views that I'm sharing is my own individual views. Here at this panel, I am not representing Willis Towers Watson. So that's the disclaimer I was told that I should share by my corporate comms team. So here it is, and it's recorded. Now the second thing is I'll come on to the specific topic very shortly, but one thing I wanted to just begin with, technically, belong to the Gen Y. But having said that, when I really, being in the both on the consulting side and also on the HR, internal HR side, I personally am not very sure if I, in under 20 years, have been actually able to use the theories in terms of the Gen X theory, the Gen Y theory, Gen Z theory, for example. I'm not saying it's being stereotyped or whatever. I mean, there is a lot of research that goes into it, and the thought that comes into picture. But when we really think from a compensation and benefits, or should I say, total rewards offering perspective, it's really down to the individual or a set of colleagues that we are working with. So Gen X, Gen Y, or any other connotation that we want to use is useful to have. But in terms of putting things into practice, we have to really look at kind of broader picture, and then assimilate and then see what we actually want to do, right? So in terms of, and again, as I said, personal views, individual views, not being rebellious, but now coming down to the effectively in terms of the what things to look at in terms of creative strategies. So we all need to start from the basic, right? So and I appreciate that in the audience and obviously on the panelists, there are a lot more senior colleagues out here as well. But I just thought I'll just begin with the first and the most important point, which is the setting up the governance pillars, right? So any program, any compensation program, or a total rewards program, or a strategy for a specific issue that an organization might be facing, we need to start with a governance pillars around it. What are those governance pillars? And the three that I was able to think through over the last couple of days at least are, how much, which is what we call budget, to what, or should I say, what's the ultimate objective, and three is for whom are we doing it. So if I go back to the first point, which is how much. So the starting point for me is what is the budget that I would have before being creative, etc., etc. Just draw some ground rules, and it just helps in ensuring that whatever ideas may come up, we can actually put that into practice, or put that into in a test mode at least, and take it further. And for that, engagement with finance becomes critical, right? So again, I'm moving away from the concept, but it's just the real life, being in HR, managing international, which is approximately 74 countries that I have. The first and the foremost thing is to ensure and understand, do we have the budget for it, and if yes, how much? And then working with the right set of people to get the right amount, if you may, even if it's an estimate. And we can get it. Many times, we get a typical thing that, we don't know, or finance is not telling us or whatever it is. But bottom line is, whatever it is in terms of project, we can have an estimated cost. And there are ways around it. We can go deeper as we need it. Two is, what is the ultimate objective? Ultimate objective, employee retention. We want to retain, should I say, first we want to hire, attract, and retain, talent, right? So if you have to, that is the core objective of talent retention, effectively after hire. Now, many times what we end up doing in terms of all our projects is focusing on the project a lot. Like if the two organizations have merged, we are focusing on harmonization of all our compensation and benefits program and wellness initiatives. But we end up with not working. So we end up putting this objective at the back end and focus on total rewards harmonization. That's what we have to do. We have to come up with new, concise job titles. We have to come up with new harmonized compensation, short-term incentive plans, etc., etc. Now, what we end up forgetting is that while HR is doing all its stuff at the background in terms of coming up with job architecture and leveling the roles and whatever, there's a guy who's actually working on the ground, getting the money for us. And whatever I'm doing now, whether it's title, a very simple thing like title, how on earth is that going to impact the guy? Because, the organizations, when they merge, come from typically from, there are various differences. Sometimes you need brokers who are very hunters. You need consultants who are not necessarily hunters but are harvesters. So the profile may be very different. You may be in a country where title is important. Just because you have come from an HR background working for a Big Four consulting organizations who have done away with titles, doesn't mean that that thing will work here as well. So what I'm trying to say is challenging that preconceived notion of what we have learned from the past would work here as well. And keeping in mind the main objective, that is, you're doing it for the employee, and the key task remains retention, right? The third point is for whom, again, the employee. So we need to look at the, without getting into too much theory again, at the demography of the employee, right? So we have a captive business, or typically in the ITES sector, the average age may be anywhere between 23 to 27, plus minus, from an Indian context. What is it that they want? Do they prefer cash versus benefits? Or, so the point is, if you have a consulting business for the same, in the same organization, which, every, organization has either a captive and a consulting business, at least in the ITES space, if you may, then, for those in the consulting background where the average age is slightly higher, the average compensation is also slightly higher, for them, would the need be compensation? Would it be benefits? So the point is, again, keeping the demographics, for example, specifically within the employee type is important. Second thing is the culture that we sit in, and it's not just the organizational culture we are talking about, it is also the external culture which impacts. So very simply, if you guys have been to the UK, in Canary Wharf, which is a financial hub, right? So we used to live like next door there. I cannot just survive on my own if I don't have the right set of, should I say, title and compensation to go with me if I'm living in that very area. Why? Because everyone else who is in that suburb or living there might be having a big title, might be having a big penthouse or whatever. So again, how does that external environment impact my compensation plans? Is something that we have to keep in mind. If my office is somewhere in Cambridge, in a remote location within Cambridge as a city, then I don't have to worry about those things, but I have to look at other aspects. So again, coming back, those three items, how much do we have in terms of budget to spend? What is the ultimate objective? And for whom are we doing it? Those three things are very important in terms of the governance pillars. And if we have the answer to these in any compensation scenario, strategic scenario, we should be then able to think through what should be the ideal strategy. right? So now in terms of the actual practices that we have seen recently happening in India, in terms of sort of creative strategies, if you want to call it that way, the first one is, and I've just noted down a few, so over the next, whatever, next 3 to 4 minutes, I'll just share some of the practices that we have seen, and I have seen, should I say, not from a consulting perspective. It's not what we sell. It's something that I have seen personally happening either in the organizations that I have worked historically or where my friends or colleagues or historical colleagues have been working. So the first one is obviously the reward and recognition programs, right? Within that, you can start from a simple pat on the back from the leader of the geography or the leader of the country or the leader of the state business or the city business, whatever it is, of that very office, to the second option, which is on a cash award basis, and these are global programs. So we'll come on to the next topic, which is about, unity in diversity, should I say. So the cash programs where, depending on the employee behaviors or the value system that is being reflected, they are offered a cash award, which may range from $25 to $500 plus minus, which can be converted to Indian rupees if it's for India. If it's in Thailand, you can do it in Thai baht. Or if in UAE, use dirhams or whatever. But again, a globally consistent R&R program is something that we can also look at. The third one is gift vouchers, what we get today. And the fourth one, which is what we are seeing now happening, a lot of Indian organizations as well, is what they love to call thoughtful expressions of appreciation, right? And I quote this because one of my friends who is an NLD leader with one of the big fours, he quoted that because I was just trying to see what are they doing in terms of concepts. So by that what we mean is going very niche in terms of the awards that we are giving to a high performer or someone who has reflected on certain set of values or performance behaviors. So, and that is how do the organization end up doing it? Typically that the team that they are a part of, they go back and ask them, what is it that this guy actually needs? So simple things like personalized suitcases, a high-end bicycle, or it's again a funny thing that I received very recently is, a name-tagged suitcase, or should I say, basically a cabin luggage. For me, that was something that I needed for a long time. I wanted from a long time, and something that I was offered as well in terms of, whatever R&R that was part of the domain that we do. So again, that was touching, and that would lead me to be with the organization, probably for a longer period of time rather than getting another 100,000 rupees in cash in my bank account, which I'll not be happy with because I have to pay 30% to the government in terms of tax, plus additional 28% in terms of GST, right, in all of that stuff. So the point is, again, as they say, thoughtful expressions of appreciation, and they are getting customized. Bottom line is this, they are getting customized or individualistic. Two is employee referrals. Now, everyone knows employee referrals, right? So we bring in friends and we give employee referrals. So what is new about that? Now, the newness which we are trying to bring is, employee referrals are not very attractive if you think about it. We give 3,000 rupees, in dollar terms, we are talking about around $50. Or if, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000. If your referral scheme is very rich, you might offer 20,000 rupees, which is approximately $400 plus minus. Now, it's very rare for that to happen. It's typically anywhere around 10,000 rupees, which is around $150. So the point is, if you use employee referrals as a tool to really hire good people and retain them on the fact that they would be performing as well, which is if we increase the referral amounts. If I'll give you a very simple example. For a recruitment agency, for a shop floor job, if you're paying, and the experts are sitting here, we at least pay 8% commission rates, plus minus, of the salary in terms of the commission that goes out to the recruitment agency, right? So instead of, we are saving, that money, right? So let's not give 8% of the salary, let's just give it 4% or 5% or whatever it is, but give it back to the employee who has referred the guy. for example. And you can increase the percentage to kind of, again, make it attractive, the referral bonus, make it really attractive to bring good quality people, and then attach a financial or a performance rider to it. That is, okay, you've hired, you have referred a guy who is at a GM position, and your referral bonus comes out to be 100,000 rupees. We will pay you in a phased manner over 2 years, 25%, 75%. And guess what? If you're the person that you have referred to is a high performer, you'll come up with the performance rider, right? So again, uh, if in the year one, that whatever amount that is due to you, if the guy is a good performer, you'll get higher value in terms of referral bonus, et cetera, et cetera. So again, there are ways, and this is being done in the organizations as of today. So again, some new practices that are coming in there. We have seen, paid in-office medical screenings as well. Again, it's part of the benefits offering that we have. Professional development budgets. Again, these are all integrated compensation strategies, should I say. It's not purely focused on one side of the things, but holistically, when we look at a professional development budgets, so there are organizations, especially in the pharma sector, and in the hot skills in the IT sector, or should I say high tech as we call it, in the consulting business, where we see a professional development budget for high potentials of anywhere between $700 to approximately $1,500, depending on the grades and the performance levels, et cetera, et cetera. So again, that is something in terms of encouragement that we give, or we are seeing that the organizations are giving to ensure that they are able to retain talent and develop them. Project completion bonus, and again, this is the cash piece, where, and it's in the sales business, those who are familiar in terms of the P&L responsibilities, someone brings in money, we give them commission, right? So in a similar manner, and when we give commission, the rates are different. Sorry, if I'm getting into detail, or if you guys feeling sleepy,
No.
please let me know.
No, because comp and ben is such a passionate subject, right? And the moment you talk about money is so touchy, but if an individual is a beneficiary of it. But I would acknowledge your answer, because for the paucity of time, I'll have to move into the next round of question as well. And thank you for putting your views and also letting us know the creative practices which are going across the organizations. And most of them you have been a witness yourself. Perhaps in a lot of the things to learn during the break from you, Dilip, today, and take home so as to find out the way to approach in the organization. But then yes, finances and comp and ben is one area wherein it should not be looked into a kind of a comp and ben strategy, but more so towards how do we engage the workforce, because they're multi-generational. And the moment you talk about engagement, and the diversity comes in place, and more so in a country like India, the diversity is not only with reference to the ages, it's also with reference to the environment and where the individual is working in. We know we work with a lot of blue-collar employees. We work also with a lot of white-collar employees. And sometimes when you devise a strategy, may it be comp and ben, may it be engagement, may it be talent development, it becomes very challenging of how to address these two workforces separately, because the issues are altogether different. So, I would like to move on to the next question to ask Mr. Manoj Sharma, who has been handling a large workforce and a mix of both blue collar and white collars. I know, Manoj, it's quite complex to manage at times the workplace issues which are also diversified in nature. So what, according to you, is the key expertise which is not taught in academics that HR executives must carry on to work to the environment?
Thanks, Anil. I think it has been wonderful listening all the legendary people sitting here. What I bring, I come from an organization which is first, fastest, and largest. And that has come up in the last 10 years in the speed what the other multinationals, they had come in 50 years. We are driven largely by our values, and values that we drive from the personality of our chairman. That is the courage, trust, and commitment. We don't use the social stratifications of these baby boomers and Gen X, but definitely we do the slottings, we make our cuts. We do the slicing and dicing to see that how the younger generations, they are able to participate what we really want from them. Now, Anil has posed, I think, very, very significant aspect of it, blue collar and white collar. Now, blue collar per se, I had managed almost 45,000 people at the peak stage when we were unable to handle them in 3 states in India, and almost 24 locations of all remote nature where poll handling processes were happening. Now, how to manage that? That was really, really very challenging. There was one situation, we had one fatality. The head was totally chopped off. There was arson, there was stone pelting, and the situation was totally under turmoil. Now imagine a 20,000 people working at one location, nobody was able to manage. I was traveling throughout the night to my location and briefing my chairman, just a virtual briefing I was doing. And I was just online. Now imagine that situation, how to manage that. There could have been very, very large bloodshed there because the masses, they don't have leadership. They don't have leader. Now, how to manage that? Now, if this is just an example I'm giving you, not to scare you, but this is the height of any situation that can happen anywhere. So there has been tremendous such situations I have managed and faced, and still there was some fatality. That was not because of our people, it was out of the boundary, and still our people got accused, and the local political, social structure that also influences in India. When we see our country, it's from civilization to industrialization. When I cut it, and I see there had been influence of war. We are ruled by British. A lot of systems in the government are still under that influence. Now, who are Gen Z? They don't want to follow the rules. They have their own ideologies. They have their own rules. Now, if we have to manage the same people in the same floor, imagine we experimented. I have at one small unit where I just thought an idea of hiring all 100% fresh people from the school and college, ITI and diploma holders. 2,600 people. It was very challenging to hire them in 10 days' time. We had that challenge to hire them in 10 days. No consultant in India, maybe in the world also, can hire them in just 10 days' time. It was Herculean task. But in Adani, we still do it. My chairman says if somebody comes to me and say that it is not possible, he is not required in the business. So we are living with those challenges also. Because my chairman is from first generation. Now, which comes from his 3 values, courage, trust, and commitment. So any idea he embraces, that is the, he takes the courage of accepting any idea from anywhere. He trusts all his people, all stakeholders. And it's a walk to the talk that he makes whatever he says, that means it. And that means everyone is supposed to demonstrate that behavior throughout the hierarchies. Throughout the hierarchies. That plant is not able to generate more than 40-45% of efficiency and quality. We are still struggling. I'm not saying we are not able to manage. We are Gen X. But we applied the idea of having Gen Y and the Gen Z, straight from the school, and the Gen Y people, millennials. We thought they are smart enough people. We hired them from campus. Now they are finding it very, very stressful to manage those people. I don't want to use the people, if you see the, what do you call that, the kid of the monkey. Sorry to use that word. Now, this is inverted comma, the millennials, they are, putting this word for the Gen Z. They are saying we are unable to manage them. They are so difficult people. They are so difficult. Now the youngsters whom I hired from the campus, who are considered to be the future leaders, they pass through wonderful tests and everything they scored very high. Now they are finding it so challenging, they are saying, sorry, we are not able to handle them. Now what to do? Now for me, for my organization, operating models are very important because those are the business models and those help us in economizing the entire competition. Now, if that model fetches me that core and non-core and where I require people to be more productive and I want them on my roles, and where non-core people are there, positions are there, and how I economize and still gain some productivity out of them, efficiency and effectiveness also. Now, how to leverage the productivity out of those people, that's a very big challenge. Immediately, I thought of having an idea of old timers, we used to have the term called foremen, who are from grassroots people and they understand man and machine better than anybody else. Imagine olden times when India was not having the technology in place, they used to hold the pipe and tell you the exact temperature, what is going on inside, whether it is cold or hot. They were so expert. They were so expert. One of my foremen, when he used to walk in the floor of my textile company, he used to tell me what is the efficiency it's going to fetch today, just with the noise level of the machines, just with the noise level of the machines. So I thought of introducing the concept of foremen. I said, let us have those foremen immediately in place. I will economize by introducing them. They will be more effective and they will be able to manage this Gen Z, difficult to manage generation with their style, probably, with their style. And that is how, there is some hope. These millennials are so happy that some Papa is coming to rescue them out of the threats of Gen Z.
Yeah.
See the situation, dilemmas of millennials, dilemmas of Gen Z, and how papas are getting introduced inside. That's the dichotomy of these generational stratifications. That is what we cut. Somebody long back, 1920, Cam Manheim had actually thought of this stratification, not because he wanted to understand this, the cuts, how the generations will come up. He may not be knowing at that point of time, but now when we look back, how the unionization has been in the 70s, 80s, and late 90s also, till late 90s. It has been very struggleful life for all HR professionals. A lot of people gunned down. HR professionals were gunned down by the extremists. Those were the very, very difficult situations. Even I was having the life threats. 3 attempts, 16 unions, all backed by chief ministers and ministers of Haryana. But that was the strategy we laid out. People were beaten by the government itself in the campus of the company. 6,000 people on board. So imagine the kind of strategies we would have made to handle those baby boomers, unionists, idealistic people who believe in ideologies to run the organization the way they want. They used to come and sit on the chair of my president, smoke there, and when president is entering, they used to tell, wait, be there for some time, let me smoke, let me complete my puff, and then I'll allow you to come here. That kind of a situation I have seen. You can imagine kind of productivity you can imagine. Almost 10 to 20% people you will find always loitering. Those were the age of baby boomers, unionist baby boomers, extremist, terrorizing the organization, the way they want to run the organization. But we made the transformational changes there. I made an international presentation and I was awarded for that. So in Adani, when I was handling this last year, I was awarded, I received 5 awards by Association of Business Communications in Mumbai. How we make different communications to the different segments of people. So those are very, very different ideas we made. Can you imagine I accepted an idea of the millennials, they wanted to have fun. They wanted to have fun at the workplace. You cannot imagine the kind of idea they gave me, and I accepted and I implemented also. We invited all people, all. You call them Gen X or baby boomers who were there, I think 6 years back, and millennials, everyone. And I announced that my CEO is going to announce that we have done some commissioning, and that has been a landmark in the country. So people gathered in the Law Garden office. They all gathered. And there was a photographer, and we said, okay, let us have the photography. The minute people are watching the photographer, looking at the photographer at some height, and people are very crazy that why he's not clicking and why he's not saying cheese or anything. And suddenly, there was a pour of water from the top of the roof. Now they want to have this type of fun. Now imagine the, the pressure of the baby boomers who got totally wet in their formal dresses, wearing tie and suit and everything, and maybe waiting for some serious guest for the discussions. They all got wet. Now imagine a situation there. Since my CEO was also a millennial, and I shared that idea with him before implementing, otherwise he would have sacked me. So if we had a drum, dhol, we call it dhol in India. So everybody, we made them to dance. And we had a small Holi also. Festival of colors, we play colors. Now imagine, I have 80 to 90% of millennials in my organization. Now imagine when this was happening, they were so excited, running, not using the lifts, but they were running through the stairs from top to bottom within 5 minutes. And they were so crazy that something is, great going to happen today. And it is a historical event that they are creating. And they were so happy. Manoj Sharma has accepted. Vineet, the CEO, has accepted. Wonderful. This is the fun they want to have. And I must tell you, these guys are so crazy, but I love accepting these, crazy ideas from them. All these, they actually amaze us. They actually amaze us. And whatever we are struggling right now, I must tell you, we have made my last piece of, very important information. We made a lot of changes, very systemic changes in the organization. So this is what Anil has well said, what is not written in the academic books.
Why are you looking at me?
I'm repeatedly looking at him.
What is not written in academic books and what is not taught by an academician as well. Yeah. Yeah.
What I'm saying is, culturally, the old-timers are seen as creating a politics in the organization. My chairman doesn't allow that. We have a, speaker phone culture. So anytime and every time is called by the chairman, whoever is sitting there is on speaker phone. So everybody understands that if chairman has called, so he's asking that, why did you not do that? And Manoj has told you like that. And he may start, saying XYZ against Manoj also. And Manoj is listening. And Manoj is listening there. And then he will say, okay, Manoj, over to you. Now the person who is talking to him, now look at the situation what will have. So there is no politics. Youngsters are allowed to escalate because they are made responsible end to end. They are not doing the transactional work that just one transaction when they do, now they say, okay, they have passed this information to Manoj Sharma, and now it will go to Louis for he's a chairman, it will go for his approval. No. If Anil is supposed to make that happen, he has to happen through me and through Louis also. He can stand in front of Louis and say that, look, Manoj is not doing that. And I'm accountable for this job. So everyone in the organization is accountable, 100%, whatever they are doing. Even if that job is to be done by, approved by the chairman, he is allowed to go to the chairman. If I am raising a note for approval, for the approval of chairman, with the signatures of 5 people, 5 CEOs and some directors, and finally it is to be approved by chairman, it is my accountability that if chairman is not there, I have to go to him to get it done. That is a different aspect that he approves within 10 minutes. It doesn't take more than that if he's in town.
Great, Manoj. I think so. It's a fantastic, piece of information that you shared with us. Thank you even for taking us to that nostalgic memories that you've had. In fact, I see a few of the students sitting here who would be entering into the HR fraternity very soon. So perhaps a set of additional skill sets that they would have written down out of your, talk would be that 2 important skill sets the HR need to have is, 1, to be a choreographer to make others dance, right? Wow. And second, possibly to learn martial arts to handle the unions. So that's possibly 2 inferences, when you handle, right? But the one key insight that you came up perhaps was, you don't need to be a millennial to handle a millennial. You need to have a millennial mindset to handle a millennial.
Absolutely.
So millennial is possibly coded more so with respect to the age and tenure. That's okay. But then, it's all about the mindset. What is it that you have? You acknowledge about some kind of ideas came up through the millennials, we accepted it and it went along, and that's what probably the HR needs to bring about a change, irrespective of a blue collar or a white collar employees, because at the end of the day they are humans and they expect as per their age would be unique. But at the same time, you also made a mention to begin with about the Gen X or the Gen Z. The rules is not something that they are used to. They would like to abide by the rules. And typically when you look at the training and development function or an organizational development, you want the people to adhere to systems, you want the people to adhere to the processes, you want them to be developed in a way to meet up to the organizational required competencies and development. That's where the phenomenal role of a function known as training and development comes in, which needs to partner